When Billy Richards first came by train to Slough, he was just 26 years old with little money and few people prepared to back him. He said, "I felt most inadequate for the task of preaching the gospel, let alone pioneering a new church." He clearly remembered taking the train from Ealing, which he said stopped at every station. "I tried to think of what I would do when I arrived, but I failed to come to any plan of investigation." At that moment, Billy recalled, I felt strangely moved. I felt the most lonely man in the world, yet somehow I was not alone. I felt a sense of defeat and hopelessness, yet at the same time, confidence and victory. It was a paradoxical experience. I was not sure whether I should go back or go on, but I felt myself moving slowly forward as though a hand were leading me, and somehow I knew that my cause was in the hands of God. So Billy went to see if he could hire some halls, but because of the war, there were no halls available for hire.
Billy recalled, "I walked day after day in search of a place where we could start our services. Then one day I saw what looked like a small shack in the middle of a field. It was a scout hut. It was the most uninviting place I'd ever seen, but it was the only place that was available. The scoutmaster thought Billy was crazy to want to start a church in such a place, but he told him he could have it for 15 shillings a week, or less than £1, for Sundays and one midweek service. Billy was so excited that he said I could have literally jumped for joy. He decided there and then he would spend all his worldly wealth of £12 on 1 month's advance rent, 2,000 handbills and timber for a notice board to announce the services."
And so it was here in these unglamorous surroundings, next door to a building actually where they made gravestones, that the Gospel Tabernacle, or King's Church International as it is now known, was born on Sunday, June the 23rd, 1943. The editor and proprietor of the Slough Observer, Frank Lawrence, who was later to become my boss, said if he'd been asked at the time to predict the church's future, he said, "I'm confident I would have stated that it had little chance of success. Its beginning seemed pathetic."
There were just 5 people present in that first Sunday morning service, including Billy and a pretty 20-year-old young lady who had prayed for 7 years for a spirit-filled church to be started. Her name was Marion Moore, and she was to become the church pianist and in time the wife of the new pastor. By the evening, the church had experienced rapid growth as the numbers doubled to 10. It was still short of the 12 that Jesus began with, but nevertheless, Billy's lifelong mission was underway, even if the scout hut was not going to make it onto any list of beautiful church buildings.
My granddad Billy, in his book Build My Church, recalled, "There were no stained glass windows. Indeed, there were no windows at all. For all the places where the windows had been were boarded up. It was like a prison." It was no wonder then that one of the first visitors invited to the scout hut was quick to remark, "This is not a proper church." The approach to our church was along a pathway of about 30 yards, made uneven by little tufts of grass and potholes. The roof of our cathedral was like a sieve, and on a wet night we had to arrange for the chairs to be placed in the dry parts of the building, and then bring in buckets and pans to catch the rain. The ping-ponging of the rain made distracting music, and one had difficulty in concentrating. It was so bad that one faithful member, who used to bring the baby in the pram, had to keep the hood up during the meeting to keep the rain from sprinkling the baby. Our heating system was a stove which seemed to say, as it stood on an iron stand in the corner of the room, "Please take me to the junkyard." It had gaping cracks around the top and 1 or 2 holes in the side, letting out smoke fumes. It was more a picture of hell than heaven.
Marion was once asked what it was like to have been part of such a small group in the church's first days, and she said, "We were never a small church in our hearts and minds. From the first meeting, it was absolute heaven." Her friend Margaret Rain, who joined in the early days of the Scout Hut ministry, said it was Billy's own faith and personal example that was a major source of inspiration to others. The thing that always struck me about him was his undaunted faith. He would not let things get him down.
From the start, Billy knew what kind of church he wanted to see built. I want to build a genuine Christian community, built on love, loyalty, and a consistent Christian lifestyle, he said. We're going to live lives which can be an example to others. We are not going to have any gossip. We're going to get on with getting people in and preaching the simple gospel and living right. Billy took the Acts of the Apostles as his textbook for growth. That meant, he said, that every church member must experience the fullness and power of the Holy Spirit in their lives. Billy said, without the power of the Holy Spirit, I can do nothing. We must have this power.
And so those Scout Hut Christians received the power of the Holy Spirit, and they went out to tell their friends the good news of Jesus. Before long, people began to come in increasing numbers. By Sunday, January the 9th, 1944, the church's diaries recorded, it was the best meeting yet and full of life. There was a good congregation. We're looking for great things and revival in Slough. By May the 14th, the numbers had grown to 36. Later that year, on October the 15th, just over 4 months after the D-Day landings, it was clear that the church had established a firm bridgehead in Slough. 50 people now attended. The little Scout Hut church that Billy believed would one day touch the world was on its way.